And suddenly anyone could make music in their own home and anyone could upload it and anyone could take it from wherever. And then that started happening with TV, and then it started happening with journalism, and then it starts happening with money because of Bitcoin. It's happening with everything, and it's happened with education. Now anyone can go on YouTube and like learn something that previously you had to go to university for years and years to learn, and you can get right to the core of what you want to know, and you can compare and contrast with some other fucking smart people, and the smartest people. You can have the best teachers in the world. It's right there. So there's your awakening.
You have,
It's amazing.
I'm more, especially since the intellectual dark web idea, I'm more reassured that the internet does have this double side, because it's very.
Give me your take on that.
Well, I work in journalism.
Yes.
So it's terrifying to me that it's destroying journalism. Like it's destroying. It takes time to do good journalism. It takes time to research. It takes effort. Yes. And I also think that the filter bubble, we've created tools that reward the lowest aspects of ourselves, our narcissism, yes. Our need for validation, our tribalism. These are the tools that we've got from the internet thus far.
Yes.
And they've been very deliberately developed to hack our dopamine systems, to hack our neurology for money. It's like a late stage capitalism model for this new, very, very powerful technology. And so I've been very pessimistic about that for quite a while.
Yes.
And it's not until probably quite recently when I've seen the emergence of the intellectual dark web, which I talk about in The Glitch a little bit, as a kind of group of countercultural thinkers who are kind of exposing the way that a lot of the media especially has been engaged in groupthink, which is why Trump came as such a surprise, which is why Brexit came as such a surprise. And so I'm now seeing, before I really saw the sort of dystopian nature of, well, we're destroying truth, we're undermining all of our sources of truth. Now I'm starting to see that there is a sort of self-generated, the best ideas winning aspect that's going on at the same time that you're seeing through like the Joe Rogan podcast, for example, and the Dave Rubin show, of these guys finding each other. Yeah. The Ben Shapiros, the Jordan Petersons, the Eric Weinsteins of this world are starting to be self-selected by the internet at the same time as you're having a lot of things being eroded away. Yeah. And that's giving me a little bit of hope. I still think things are going to get really rocky before, because what we're seeing is the destruction of all of the structures. All the structures everywhere are being undermined by the force of technology.
Well, it's anything that's a middleman, is what it is. So the universities were the middlemen for knowledge, and then what's happened? Who said, was it? Anyway, as this happens, everyone pivots to sort of being entertainment or gossip. So news used to just give you news, and then you can get news from all over the place, and a random guy on Twitter. So news becomes a sort of entertainment thing, and it's got a slant and it's got a gossipy angle, and that's what it does. And education's done the same thing. They all do that. So you're not seeing the destruction of the whole thing, you're seeing the destruction of the middleman, or Yeah. But the actual knowledge itself isn't being destroyed.
No.
And the access to the knowledge is actually increasing.
Yeah.
And while there's the initial, which was the meme that was put out by the media, that was scared, the fake news meme, right? Oh, you can't trust all these guys because they're not us, but that backfired on them, because then you can see a million examples of where they have themselves deliberately misinformed or, been insincere or whatever for deliberate reasons. So they kind of destroyed themselves. It was like the final blow was dealt by themselves with that. And then people aren't as stupid as they've been made out to be.
Which also makes a lot of sense. It's like the death spiral of the media, as their kind of audiences are declining, is itself now part of the problem, because they are being forced into more and more clickbaity kind of stories themselves.
Because they've become this clickbaity lunatic asylum.
Yeah.
But what that means is, like we were saying, the algorithm thing, it means suddenly you can watch a person having a really, really in-depth conversation with another person, and they're educated on a subject, and you can watch them doing it for hours. Whereas in the previous model, you'd see 5 minutes, the Kathy Newman thing, this is your world. If you were watching that on television, you'd see 5 minutes edited down to a little thing, and it might distract you from your chips or whatever and get you a bit annoyed. But that it's on the internet, you can sit there and watch that thing for an hour, and then you can really think about it, and then you can go watch both of those people talking about other things at length. And this is a much more heightened state of awareness and consciousness and sort of being than anyone had previously. You know, I think about.
But it also then puts the onus on the individual as well.
Yeah.
There's a kind of democratization of it.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that everyone's suddenly be super smart overnight, and that, like, you know, the world is saved in that fashion. But it means that you have a generation growing up who expect something a lot more.
Something that was limited to a very small number of people. I mean, the universities used to be for the aristocracy.
Exactly.
Now anyone with a smartphone has access to pretty much all of the world's knowledge that's ever existed. And this is...
You've got the Library of Alexandria in your pocket at all times.
Yeah.
Everybody does.
I think you follow the same stoic...
I love that guy. He follows me.
Right.
He only follows 82 people. I'm really hoping he starts talking, because he would be a great source of audio material. But that last point is an important point, because this was Orwell wrote about this many years ago. There's a certain class who claim to be, you know, fighting for and arguing for the working classes, but they actually hate the working classes. They look down their nose at them, and the Brexit made this so apparent. You know, you've got this kind of sort of elite liberal core in London who hate the rest of the country and think that they're all racist scumbags and have no empathy whatsoever for their actual lives and what all these policies have actually done to their day-to-day lives. They don't care. They hate them. And the only thing they hate more than them are the really rich. Yeah. And that was the case hundreds of years ago, and it's still the case.
The frame that I look at things through is similar to Peterson, a sort of Jungian lens, and the idea of the shadow. Yes. And the shadow is sort of all of the parts of yourself that you repress and deny. Mm-hmm. And what it feels like to me is that this democratization of everything is allowing all of the shadow aspects of our culture to come to the surface. Yeah. And so the process we're going through, and this is so clear with Trump, it's like Trump, you couldn't design America's id more better than Trump. It's like, it's everything that America wants to deny about itself, the narcissism, the worship of wealth for its own sake. I mean, all of these aspects of America that we know are part of the American character, but Americans don't really want to admit that they're part of them, or liberal Americans don't want to admit they're part of the American character. So I see on so many levels we have these figures emerging as the id or the shadow of these different, and our task is to integrate them. And yes. So it's just kind of say, okay, so what does Trump say about me? Yeah. Or what does, all of these figures, all of it's like, what part of myself is Trump representing, for example? But this is why it's the sort of the deep, which is why I think Peterson's so interesting as well, that we need a deep mythological structure to make sense of all this, archetypes, and the idea of, this sort of Jung, who seems to have gone deeper into the human soul than just about anyone in the 20th century, is like probably the key guide that we need now to kind of get through the next 10 years or so.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe less, because things are happening remarkably speedily. Yeah. Like, seriously, rewind 5 years, it's like a different world, completely different world. It's like, if you look at like meme culture and how important meme culture has become, like Trump was partly elected because of memes. Meme humor is black. It is as dark as anything. It is pure darkness. Yesterday, a British man was found guilty and is looking at a year in prison for a meme. You know about this guy?
Count Dankula. Yeah.
But what he did was his joke to annoy his girlfriend was teaching his girlfriend's dog to respond to Hitler quotes by doing a Heil, a Sieg Heil, or whatever you call that thing.
Are we allowed to find that funny?
I thought it was hilarious, but that's because I have quite dark humor anyway, and I was a big Brass Eye fan, and now the world is Brass Eye, right? And that's just where we are. But this guy's going to jail. But the thing is, you look at any meme group on the internet, this is like half of Facebook is what they call dank memes, which is basically Hitler jokes. And that used to be that was what John Cleese did. That's like, what's his name? Graham Lynham, who's like very, very vocal social justice guy on Twitter. Like Father Ted was full of Nazi jokes. And suddenly Nazi jokes, because they're being made by commoners with YouTube channels, and like, they're awful. But like all of meme culture is black and dark and full of sorrow. All of contemporary rap music, sort of the underground stuff that then influences the mainstream, is dark as hell, and it's all suicide and I want to kill myself, and just gothness is vast right now, and that shadow side is the biggest thing within culture everywhere, within comedy, within music.
You're saying it's kind of erupting out of everywhere.
Yeah, it's in everything, in every aspect. Anything I look at, any of the worlds that I pay attention to. And I saw this coming because 2010 was the high. 2010 we were quite psychedelic. The biggest musical force culturally was Odd Future, who wore tie-dye shirts with unicorns and cats on them, and they were multi, they were black kids and white kids, and they didn't have any access to grind about anything to do with race or anything like that. And it was all very jolly and nice, and everyone was doing Molly, which was ecstasy, and everyone was doing mushrooms and acid. And after a psychedelic thing, it always swings back to a nihilist dark thing culturally. It's usually about every 7 years. So it was definitely going to go goth, and lo, it did. And now all the drugs people are taking are kind of like speedy, cokey type drugs, and everyone's dressed in black and talking about suicide, and all these things are erupting. But this is coinciding with this technological shift, so it's the biggest we've ever seen this happen.
Right.
And it's happening across the whole West.
What happened?
So it's like it's a catalyst or a magnifier is the technology.
Yeah.